Cats. It's Mrs. G here with the Storybook session, and I'm going to be reading today one of my daughter's favorite books when she was younger called Nobody Rides the Unicorn. The author is Adrian Mitchell, and our illustrator is Stephen Lambert. Today we're going to read with permission of the publisher Scholastic Press, and I'm going to share with you today the story Nobody Rides the Unicorn. Now the pictures are pretty cool, so take a look when I show them to you that go along with the story. In the faraway land of Jeopardy, there was once a king who was full of fear. He was afraid of everybody in the world. He was sure they were plotting to put poison in his wine or in his food. So the king called the most cunning man in Jeopardy, a man named Dr. Slythe. There's Dr. Slythe, and there is the king. There is only one sure way to avoid being poisoned, said Dr. Slythe. You must drink from a goblet made of a unicorn's horn, and you must eat with a knife, fork, and spoon made from a unicorn's horn. But how can I catch a unicorn? Asked the king. Such a beast is too fierce and fast for my hounds. Dr. Slythe whispered in his ear. The unicorn can only be trapped by a quiet young girl with a gentle voice. So find me that girl, bellowed the king. Dr. Slythe sent for Zoe, the beggar girl. She was the quietest, gentlest girl in all of Jeopardy, but she lived alone, and she was nobody's child. Zoe was brought before the king, and Dr. Slythe told her, We will take you into the deep forest, and you will sit alone, singing sweetly and softly. After a while, perhaps a unicorn will appear and come lay his head in your lap. Zoe was very excited and scared, as she really wanted to see the unicorn. So she went with the king and the doctor into the deep forest and sat alone, waiting under a silver birch tree. After a while, she began to sing, very sweetly and softly, a song that she had learned in her dreams. His coat is like snowflakes woven with silk. When he goes galloping, he flows like milk. His life is all gentle, and his heart is bold. His horn is magical, living gold. Nobody rides the unicorn. He grazes under a secret sun. His understanding is so great that he forgives us everyone. Nobody rides the unicorn. His mind is peaceful as the grass. He is the loveliest one of all, and he lives behind the waterfall. While she sang, Zoe looked down at the flowers around her feet, and when she looked up, there was the unicorn. His dark golden eyes gazed into hers. He snuffled, stamped his hooves on the earth, and then he lay down and he put his head in her lap. She said, good unicorn, and she tickled him under his chin. His breathing was warm and musical, and before long he closed his eyes in sleep. Suddenly the air was torn open by trumpets, and out of the forest ran 100 huntsmen. There was a terrible struggle, and the unicorn was wounded 7 times by spears and hounds. But he fought on until finally Dr. Slythe crept up behind him and threw a magical golden bridle around his neck. Then the unicorn stood still and allowed himself to be led out of the forest and down the road by the river, through the streets of the city, and into the gardens of the royal palace. There, the unicorn was pushed into a paddock surrounded by a strong fence, and the unicorn was chained to a tree. Now, Zoe was very angry. for she had been used to trick the unicorn and make him a prisoner, and she knew that was wrong. When she heard the king and the doctor planning to kill the unicorn and make a goblet of knives and forks and spoons out of its beautiful horn, Zoe was angry enough to burst. But Zoe was clever. She hid her anger, and in the middle of the night, she crept into the gardens of the royal palace. She cleaned the wounds of the unicorn, and she set him free. The unicorn lowered his head once to her, and he gazed into her eyes. And then he neighed once, and he galloped off down the streets of the sleeping city, along the road, beside the river, and into the depths of the forest. When the king heard that the unicorn had escaped and that Zoe had set him free, he shouted at her, "You shall be banished. I order that from this day on no one in jeopardy shall speak to this little nobody." Zoe was in disgrace, and she had nowhere to go. She thought of the unicorn, but where could she find him? And then she remembered the lines from her dream song. He is the loveliest one of all, and he lives behind the waterfall. So Zoe left the city, and she followed the road beside the river. A full moon changed the water to silver. She followed its shining path as it wound its way through the forest and towards the bright mountains. Suddenly, she was face to face with this waterfall, huge and powerful. Zoe started to climb it, but the water poured down strong and icy, and the cold hurt her hands so much that she cried. Then, without warning, Zoe lost her footing and she found herself falling through the waterfall and into a cave. There might have been snakes, there might have been bears, but Zoe thought only of the unicorn as she scrambled through the cave towards a speck of light that became bigger and bigger until she came out the other side. Zoe looked down into the secret valley of the unicorns, and there she saw the unicorns dancing together slowly in the moonlight. She sat down to watch them, and she was so happy that she began to sing. Zoe's unicorn heard and turned away from the dancing and trotted over towards her. His dark golden eyes gazed into hers. He snuffled and he stamped his hooves on the earth. And then he lay down and he put his head in her lap. And she said, "Good unicorn, good unicorn." And she tickled him under the chin. Then she sang her dream song sweetly and softly to him. At the end of Zoe's song, the unicorn's dark golden eyes spoke to her, saying, "Tell me, my kind friend, who are you?" Zoe said, "Me, I'm nobody." "Well, climb on my back, kind nobody," said the unicorn with his eyes, "for nobody rides the unicorn." So Zoe climbed onto his back, she held onto his mane, and together they trotted down into the secret valley of the unicorn. So hopefully you guys figured out the title, Nobody Rides the Unicorn. You thought it was going to be that nobody's allowed to ride the unicorn, but with the trick of the play on words, we find out that Zoe is able to ride the unicorn, mostly because of her kindness and her help. So if you guys enjoyed reading and listening, I hope you're continuing to read and share some of your favorite books. Well, thanks for listening and see you soon.